Хороший в прошлый раз.
Okay?
Okay, let's start.
You are welcome. Yes.
Good afternoon. Today I want to present Vakulenko and myself on interregional migration in Russia. This is if you remember, for those of you who attended my last presentation in October, back then I presented two papers. The first of which was a purely empirical paper, and the second one was back then work in progress. But this work in progress has continued and is now almost completed. And today I want to present only one paper which has the working title of the impact of commodity exports and market potential on interregional migration, theory and evidence from Russia. So I will talk about the motivation, which has a lot to do with the spatial distribution of production and migration in Russia. Then I will present the theoretical model, which I already did the last time, but back then it wasn't finished. Now it is more or less finished, and some things have changed too. Then talk about the migration equation, which results from the theoretical model, and the econometric specification, present empirical results, and then talk about summary and conclusions. Now, if you take a look at the spatial distribution of production in Russia, then we see a lot of differences, especially between the west and the east of Russia. This map shows the shares of the commodities sector, labor shares in labor in the commodity sector in each region. By the commodity sector we mean the exploitation and processing of natural resources. And we see that the commodity sector is much more stronger in the eastern regions of Russia than in the western regions, where we have only very low shares of labor in the commodity sectors. Commodity sector.
What does it mean in the framework of your report? Commodities sector.
Natural resources, which means the exploitation of natural resources and the refining and processing.
Это Си. Добыча полезных ископаемых.
Так это не commodities sector.
Это никому
Это сырые.
Okay. Later on, but commodities at the what? CEE.
English is a very unprecise language, but usually if you talk in
This
economics
is
about
mineral resources extraction. Maybe. Okay.
English glossary
Later on, yeah.
and English explanation for commodities is raw materials.
Yes.
And also we find in literature that usually for oil and gas use commodities.
yeah, it's true.
There is
We also think about this.
harmonized classification, so we should rely upon this.
Yes, it's
International
it
one?
is-
Okay.
No, it is in the classification of in the SITC classification. It is
Not for example.
C1 and C3, which we include. And
C,
this is
yes.
C1 is the exploitation of natural resources, and C3 is supply.
So I just think that it's not a good word for this sector.
Maybe it's better C in acquired classification, or this C1, C2. Maybe better. Okay, it's some remark. But
I mean,
any
of
case,
course, I agree with you. We had long discussions about the vocabulary, and of course in the text we define it precisely. But maybe in the title, we have also discussed about the title, because right now the title says the impact of commodity exports, and then maybe the reader is not sure, so maybe we change that in the title. But in the text we define it precisely, and then by the sectors, and then it should be clear. So, natural resources exploitation and processing is especially strong in the eastern regions, and in contrast, manufacturing sector is much stronger in the western regions, as you can see. This is again the share of labor in each region in the manufacturing sector, which is then the sector D. And we see that although some regions in Siberia have also high shares in this sector,
May I ask a
western
question?
shares are even higher.
It's difficult to understand about no data, which regions.
We don't
Ah,
consider
okay.
Chechnya and Ingushetia.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have data on 78 regions and only these two have no data.
For slides, it's better to use colors.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're right.
For printing, of course.
Now, when we take a look at the Russian economy, the development of the Russian economy over the past 10 years, then we see that the share of mining and supply in gross value added, so in total production in Russia, has increased, while the share of manufacturing has decreased. Now, if you put these three figures together, a high share of the commodity sector in the eastern regions and a high share of the manufacturing sector in the western regions, and a declining manufacturing sector, but a rising commodity sector, then we would expect, if this has anything to do with labor demand, then we would expect migration to leave those regions which are strong in manufacturing and go to those regions which are strong in commodities. Yes?
Sorry, what's GVA?
Gross value added with total production.
Okay.
But as we can see here, this is not the case. These are the net migration rates from 2004 to 2010. Negative net migration rates mean that the regions have lost population due to migration within Russia. And we see that it is not the eastern regions which have gained population, but it is the western regions where net migration rates are positive, and it is the eastern regions where net migration rates are negative. And our aim, our research question is now, does this mean that the increasing commodity sector has a negative impact on migration? Is there any relation? How can this occur? We only take a look at these descriptive statistics, then we would say regions which are strong in commodities lose population, but how can this be the case if the sector is expanding? And to do so, we further developed a theoretical model by Jose, who has further developed the influential model by Krugman. Krugman has developed a theoretical model of two regions with two sectors, agriculture and industry, where he showed that industry becomes more productive if it is based in a region where industry is already strong. And so one region becomes stronger and the other becomes smaller. Jose has added the services sector to Krugman's model and comes to different results. If you have services which cannot be traded across the economy, then you have also a reason why some regions may attract migrants even though they have only small industry sector. Now I will explain this model when I explain our model, because our model is a further development of José's model, we add a fourth sector, the commodity sector, and with a difference to what José and Krugman did. José and Krugman only look at one economy which exists of a number of regions, but which is isolated from the rest of the world. They have only endogenous they look only at endogenous developments, migration within the country, and changes in demand, but it's not connected to the outside world. Our objective, our theoretical objective is to adapt this model to the situation in Russia. It is not only that the commodity sector has increased by size in Russia, it is also very interesting that the commodity sector is very big in size in Russia when compared to other large economies. It has almost a share of 15% in total production in Russia, which is very high compared to other countries. And what is more, Russia has also a very high export share of its production, about 25%. With the ratio of exports to GDP is about 25%, which is higher than in most large economies. And also the share of commodities in exports is increasing. So you have three trends in Russia. The commodity sector is increasing in relative value, in total value, and in exports, and exports are also increasing. In other words, we can't ignore, when we look at the Russian economy, we can't ignore things which happen in the rest of the world. And what we do is we try to implement these events by implementing changes in demand for commodities in the rest of the world. Then, if we have finished the theoretical model, we transform it into an econometric specification and test it for 78 Russian regions for the observation period 2004 to 2010. And before I start with the theoretical model, I want to say a few words about market potential. This concept of market potential is very important in the models by Krugman and José. It was introduced in 1954, so the idea is not very new. It is that new economic geography models are typically based on this assumption, and there is also reason to believe that it is important for Russia, because Russia is such a big economy and a big country with large, with gigantic distances. Now, what does market potential mean?
No, stop.
Это не трогайте.
Здесь?
Нет, здесь можно. А зачем выключил? А, писать на экране?
Я хотела там.
Там не надо, но... Окей.
Market potential
Okay.
means, like the name suggests, how good is your position in geographical terms for production? What is your potential to export your goods? Consider yourself as a regional economy, and you have neighbors, of course. If you are a regional economy, then you're connected to other regions by definition. And your neighbors may be big economies or small economies. Now, if you're surrounded by only small economies, and the big economies are far away, a big economy means they're producing much, so income is also high, and if they are producing very much, this means they're also demanding very much. So, but the regions which are close to you, with short distance, they are not demanding so much. And these large distances increase transport and trade costs, which is a disadvantage for your region because production becomes more expensive. For instance, exporting to this region from your region is much more expensive than from this region, because it is closer. The situation is of course different if you are surrounded by big regions and the small regions are far away. Then market potential is higher because you have lower trade costs. And also a third effect is your own size. If you happen to be a big economy by yourself, then you have a large market to supply without any transport cost, which has also an impact on your production potential. This plays a very important role in the new economic geography models because since production and income are equalized, the more you produce, the more income you have. This means that people have also, in terms of migrating, they have an interest, a migrant has an interest to reside in a region with a high market potential because here you also can buy a lot of varieties for cheaper prices. Because this does not only, market potential means not only that you can export your things more cheaply, but also import things more cheaply. And if a migrant has a choice between two regions which are identical, otherwise identical, but one with a wide range of varieties, either imported for low cost or maybe produced in your own big economy, then this makes the region more attractive, which then will attract firms because this is where the customers are, and so on. And there's reason to believe that this is important, especially for Russia, because when we look at Russia, we see a relatively densely populated area in the west, but in the east you have not much population, so this would mean market potential is high in these regions, in Moscow, or maybe between St. Petersburg and Moscow, but very low here in northern Siberia or in the Far East, because these are small economies and they have only small neighbors. I mean, of course, area size is big, but the economies are not big because there's not many people living there. So this is a reason to believe that market potential is also important in Russia. And now to the model. As I said before, we continue with Coset's model, so we have the same assumption, apart from the fact that we have a fourth sector, the commodity sector. We continue with the agricultural sector, manufacturing sector, and services sector. Workers in the agricultural sector are immobile, they do not move, they stay where they are, and they produce one agricultural good which can be traded at zero cost. All other workers are mobile and they may migrate. Commodities are not consumed but exported to third countries at world market prices, which means that here we have this exogenous influence of what is happening around the world, namely the price. And this has the impact that labor demand in the commodity sector depends on world market price changes. Because if the world market price changes, then production will also change, and if production in this sector changes, then labor demand changes, and this will play a very important role in our model. Monopolistically, and manufacturing and services sectors are monopolistically competitive and produce horizontally differentiated goods. Manufactured goods can be traded throughout the economy, where trade induces transport costs. This is where the market potential comes in. This would mean that peripheral regions are disadvantaged with respect to manufacturing and therefore also becoming less attractive. Service goods can be consumed only in those regions which they are produced. This was introduced by Coset. This is overtaken from Krugman. This was introduced by Coset. So to have a wide range of service goods in your own region makes the region more attractive for a potential migrant, but they cannot be traded. Consumers prefer goods varieties. So the more is produced in a region, the bigger a region is, the more attractive it is to a migrant. Now, production functions in the manufacturing sector, which is C, and the services sector D, look very similar, and they represent increasing returns to scale. So the more is produced, the cheaper production becomes.
Another not as an equate. C manufacturing,
C,
service.
C is manufacturing sector, and D is services sector in our
The
case.
same as in Crozet model, we decide to take the same letters.
So this is the same as in the Crozet model. Now, which is what is new, and this is also slightly changed since the last presentation. We think we introduce the commodity sector, which has the symbol B, and we assume that returns in the commodity sectors are decreasing. So the more you produce, the more expensive production becomes. And with this function, this is labor input, and this is the production, and X and gamma are technology parameters. If we multiply total labor by the wage rate, we get total cost for production in the commodity sector in region I. And now we assume that producers in the commodity sector, which may also be the state, doesn't matter if it's many or just one producer, because we think that we assume that production is adapted to the world price, and the world price is exogenously given. So first there is this world price, and then production is adapted, and this is nothing else than the marginal product of the commodity sector. This is L multiplied by W, and taking the first derivative with respect to Q as this result, and we assume that marginal productivity equals the world market price, and then we get the function of production in the commodity sector in region I, which is a function of the world market price, technology parameter, and wage. And if we introduce into this equation again labor input, then we get this equation, which already says a lot. It says that the higher the world market price, the higher will be labor input. In other words, if we take the derivative with respect to time of this differential, then we get this differential equation, which tells this story. If world market price increases, the labor demand also increases in the commodity sector in region I, because you need more labor to produce more. This is the story of the commodity sector in our model. And concerning market potential, in this equation captures the story which I told just before. This is production of manufacturing goods in your own region I, and the more is produced in your own region I, the lower will become the price index for manufactured goods. Because production in your own region does not include trade costs, which are here multiplied tau. The trade cost as defined here, delta is distance and kappa is a parameter. And the higher the trade costs and the more you import, the higher becomes the price index. A high price index for manufactured goods means that the real wage decreases if the nominal wage is identical. It just means cost of living is more expensive. So this is an interpretation of market potential, which is also typical in the new economic geography literature. To say that the price index is the inverse of market potential. In this case, it is expressed as the price index, but the story is the same. The more remote you are, the more far away from big economies, the more expensive will the prices for manufactured goods become. And you can think about it the other way as I did before. It also means that market potential is lower. So this is the same story told differently in this case with the price index. In contrast, price index of services goods is not influenced by imports because there aren't any imports, because we are assuming that you can't trade services, and this means that the price index, in this case expressed as the price index, becomes lower the more service goods are produced, which is a result from the consumption functions, which I will not discuss in detail here, but is also a result of the assumption of increasing returns in the regions. The more you're producing, the cheaper production gets. This will also play an important role in this equation. This now is the key equation for the migration equation, which will follow, I think, on the next slide. This equation is we also this is also overtaken from Crozet, but slightly adapted to our model. But the basic idea is the same. This is the utility from migrating from region I to region J, which is a function of the real wage, omega, the probability of finding a job rho, and the relation between the regions I and J. These three variables play an important role, and they are functions by themselves. This real wage omega is one of the key concepts in the new economic geography literature. It is basically telling the story that it is not the nominal wage expressed in monetary units which matter to a migrant, but it is the real wage. So the nominal wage is divided by price indexes, which we have seen before for manufactured goods and services. We are assuming that agricultural goods have the same price everywhere, and as we said before, commodities cannot be consumed, so they don't enter the equation here. And the higher the price levels are, the lower is the real wage. But of course, you can compensate workers for high price levels with higher nominal wages. If you consider maybe in northern Siberia, many things are very expensive because they have to be carried over long distances. So if the price index goes up, then you still can have the same real wage if the nominal wage is also higher, and the other way around. So this idea of market potential enters this equation indirectly via the price index for manufactured goods. The probability of finding a job rho is a function of what we have seen before, the change in labor demand in the commodity sector. The current size of the commodity sector, so we are weighing this change by the size, the unemployment rate, the employment rate, and the total population in this region. So we are also taking account of the size of the region. And then we have this relation between regions I and J, which is a function of distance between regions I and J, and whether they have a common border or not. Now migration flows. Now to understand the empirical results, I have to spend a few words on the migration equation as it is expressed here. What does it tell here? We have here total migration from I to j divided by total migration from I to every region j. This is a number of all emigrants from region I, and from all emigrants of region I in one period, some go to a particular region j. And this is divided by the number of all emigrants from I. So this is a share, and the sum of it equals 1, of course. And this is a function of the utility, which we have seen before, from migrating from I to a particular region j, divided by the sum of utilities of all utilities of migrating from I to j, and utility from staying. And if we take the logarithm of this expression, then it looks like this. Then we get this equation, which is the basis for the econometric specification. On the left-hand side, we have now this relation between those emigrants from I who go to a particular region j minus the logarithm of all emigrants from I. This is a function of the real wage in j, as we have seen it before, the probability of finding a job in j, the relationship between I and j, and this term alpha, which is expressed here, which results from the denominator here, and which we will then interpret as fixed effects for region I, of region I. This is the same as we have seen it before. This is just this expression where we insert these functions. So if we insert these functions into this expression, then we get this. It looks like this. We see here then migration from I to j as a share of all emigrants from I. Depends on the nominal wage in region j, the price level in region j, where we expect a negative impact, total labor in sector D, which is the services sector, the international price change, world market price change for commodities, the size of region B, of sector B, which is the commodity sector, total labor in the commodity sector in region J, unemployment rate in region J, where we also expect a negative influence, employment rate in region J, where we are not sure about the effect because it may work in one or the other direction, and so does the total population size in region J. So these two variables are included as control variables. Distance between I and J, where we expect a negative influence, and also not having a common border, where we expect also a negative influence. Fixed effect and constant. Now we interpret this equation in two ways. First, with a gravity interpretation, which is a more simple interpretation, which just includes on the right-hand side of the equation the nominal wage, total labor, unemployment rate, employment rate, distance, and not having a common border. We start with this expression because it's simpler and we can see some interesting facts already from this equation. In this column, we include only total labor. And we see that the coefficients have the expected signs and are highly significant. The positive influence of the nominal wage in region J, total labor, negative effect of the unemployment rate, positive effect of the employment rate, negative effect of distance, as well as not having a common border. Then in this column, we split total labor into the four sectors which we have also considered in a theoretical model, and now we see already an interesting first result. If you remember the maps, we saw that the western regions have high manufacturing labor shares, and the eastern regions have high commodities, high labor shares in the commodities sector, but migration goes the other direction. Here we see that in fact the commodity sector has nevertheless a positive impact on migration from region I to J, and the manufacturing sector has a negative impact. Even though the correlation coefficients are the opposite. We have, if we take the correlation coefficient between the net migration rate of a region and its size of the share of the manufacturing sector, this correlation coefficient is positive. The correlation coefficient between commodities, share of the commodities sector and net migration is negative. These coefficients tell a different story. So here we see that the commodity sector in fact has a positive impact on immigration. However, we have one problem with this specification, and this is a very high correlation coefficient between the sizes in the manufacturing sector and services sector. And we overcome this problem by subtracting construction, and as a next step we add construction to the services sector, because construction is often related to the services sector because it has to do with the total size of a region. And if we do that, then the correlation coefficient between sector C and D reduces, and so we don't have a problem with multicollinearity, and the result is the same, especially the positive influence of sector B and the negative influence of sector C on migration does not change. The second step is a direct transformation of the migration equation, which we have seen before. This is the same as we have seen before, we just replaced the terms in front of the variables by these betas. And these are the results. Again, we have a positive influence of the commodity sector and a positive influence of the services sector in migration. So this is as expected. But then we use, for the price level, if you remember, it was a function of production of manufactured goods within the region and a function of distance of production of other regions. We can't measure this directly, but we use various variables which we think capture the price level. We start with the official subsistence income level in a region to get a proxy for regional price levels. And we see it is positive, which is not what the literature in new economic geography would expect. If we translate this to the concept of market potential, this would mean market potential has a negative impact. Or put differently, the higher the cost of living, the more migrants will come. This is, however, a robust result. We replace subsistence income with a fixed set of products, which is also an official list of products and price levels. It's also positive, while the impact of sector B does not change. It's a very robust result. Then we even try to estimate market potential by a function of the size of economies and dividing by the square of distance. This is negative, so the market potential when we estimate it has again this contrary sign. Now the other variables have the expected signs, unemployment rate is negative. Well, employment rate does change, but as I've mentioned before, this is a control variable, and there are also reasons why employment rate may have a negative impact on migration. Total population is also a negative sign, which is probably due to the fact that the size of the population is already partly captured by the sizes of especially sector D, because these are total numbers. So what is left in the total population is the size of the sector C, and also the people which are not economically active, and this has then a negative impact. So this is a control variable. Distance has the negative impact, and also not having a common border. And not to forget the world market commodities price, which works here as a time index, because we have one value for each year. There's also a positive coefficient. Now I come to the summary and the conclusions. And in the conclusions I will discuss about the three main results. Firstly, we have augmented the model by Crozet by the commodity sector. Labor demand in the commodity sector depends on world market price changes, and so we can explain migration from I to J depending on labor demand, wages, and labor market conditions. We have in the econometric results a robust positive sign for the commodity sector. Also, the services sector has a positive influence, which can also be interpreted as a preference of consumers for a wide range of services, which is of course understandable. If you compare Moscow to smaller countries, cities in Moscow, you have a wide range of service goods, including cultural events, etc. But the price level is unexpectedly positive. Now, how can that be? Firstly, we see from the theoretical results and empirical results that the commodity sector attracts migrants, but the price index means that the real wages are obviously relatively unimportant. One reason may be, and we also have checked this, that the price level is correlated with the commodity sector. If it is the case that the commodity sector or the natural resources are found in remote regions, like in northern Siberia, for instance, or in the Far East, where also cost of living is higher, then this positive effect of the price level captures this correlation, this coincidence. However, we have also an alternative explanation, because we have seen, if you remember our first presentation, a different result which we interpreted in a connection with labor demand. We have seen in the other empirical study which we did that income differences across Russian regions have almost no impact on migration, but GDP growth does. Now here we see that the cost of living has even the contrary effect, and we think that this is due to the fact that in the real life migrants don't have a complete set of choices. They are not free to go anywhere they want to, but they actually go to where labor is demanded. And our interpretation in the last presentation was it is expected income which matters, and expected income for a migrant worker means having a job or being unemployed. So if the actual worker in the real life has the choice between going to a region where he has a job, maybe in the commodity sector, even if cost of living is high in this region, it still means that his income will be higher than being unemployed in his or her home region. This is our interpretation. It doesn't matter. Real prices, real wages and therefore price levels are not that important as long as we have unemployment and also different qualifications. Now, another conclusion is that we have seen in Russia very high emigration from the eastern regions to the western regions. We have seen this on the map. And our results show if the commodity sector has a positive effect on in-migration, then the conclusion from this is that the commodity sector has also slowed down the population decrease in those eastern regions where the commodity sector is big. So this is our paper and these are our results.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next step is questions. First of all, sure. Okay.
У них 5 часов вручения дипломов, поэтому сейчас у нас часть уйдет.
Торопитесь. Тоже замолено бежит.
Скажи. I want to speak.
Could you show once again the map with share of population in commodity sector? Оп. Коля, без вас не работает.
Shift B.
Yes? Ага.
This one.
This.
Hmm?
This slide. Okay.
Yeah, this one. No, this one's on full.
Ага. So, this is the borders of this distribution. 21 point, what does it mean?
This is manufacturing sector. You wanted to see
okay,
commodity
okay.
sector. So it's
Shares. This is not a shares, it is percentage.
Percentage, okay. In
In
labor of the
In this region.
Of this region. Okay. I see.
So it is
Yeah.
LBI.
Total labor in region.
L
In R.
Y.
Okay.
And
So- All right.
okay. And
Not
how
to
you
population,
calculated
the
the
labor.
migration rate from the statistics and migration rate? How do you calculate?
Migration rate?
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference. In this case, this was just for illustrating. This is net migration, what we see. But this is just for illustration. We use as a dependent variable, not net migration. Net migration is immigrants minus emigrants divided by population. This is displayed here.
From the statistics, yeah?
Yes, this is official data.
Official-
Only registered migrants.
Quarterly data or
No.
monthly?
Annual.
Annual.
Annual data, yeah.
But this is something different. This is what we use as the dependent variable is migrants going from I to J
Flow.
divided by all emigrants from I.
Okay.
This is why we have such a high number of observations.
And why do you want to use such parameterization of utility functions of production output? Isn't obvious that it is the best fit for the data, or maybe there is another theoretical reason for this production?
What do you mean for utility?
For utility functions, for production functions, they have very difficult, complicated form, and for me, it's rather famous with this function. And, why do you want to use this parameterization?
OMS,
Well,
слушай,
the reason for
панель.
this is
Панельный
that
данный с
Jose
фиксированным эффектом.
То есть fixed effect,
has
yeah. Okay.
tested this model for
Мы
European
параметризовали всё,
countries,
эксперимент
for 5
провели
European
как раньше
countries,
было.
Italy,
Yeah,
Britain,
Mhm.
Germany, France, and Spain, and the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And he has found out that his model is able to explain migration in these countries. So the model is a starting point of explaining how migration works. And one of his main conclusions is that market potential has an effect on migration. He shows that his question was actually whether migrants do follow market potentials. We want to check out whether this is also the case for Russia.
But it's good for European countries, but Russia isn't European. For example, I think that net migration from northern regions are mainly based on, for example, temperature differences between
Развернись и спроси. Money knows.
between different regions.
Yes,
So
this is true. Actually, we have different results. We have no evidence for market potential, quite the other way. But to figure that out, you have to test it. You don't know before you haven't checked it.
And do you include, for example, temperature in your empirical econometric model?
No.
We think that this is a fixed effect.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we have a panel.
Yes.
We have a
Yeah.
panel
Yes.
estimation.
A few technical questions.
Yes.
Could you show the econometric model with logarithms and minus sum? Yeah. I guess that the logarithm of the sum, the IJM is not included or included.
Right, once again.
Once again.
Some of
You indicated the sum from
without
from
internal.
one without I.
Intra-regional regional.
Okay, so
Yes, it's
it's technical, but
Yes, yes.
it's better, for example,
We have to write that
some
I
prime or something like
doesn't
that.
equal J in our sum.
J is not equal I.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
We
okay,
don't
okay,
have
yeah, I
intra-regional.
guess. And maybe more sophisticated question. What about heteroscedasticity in this model?
Yes, we calculate
Did you check?
cluster robust error and white robust errors. And we present this.
I see. The question is, have you discovered the heteroscedasticity?
Yes, of course there is.
Of course.
System.
Could you explain the nature of this? For example, eastern regions are different from, or if you can, maybe not.
We can do this, but we are not interested in
I'm
these
not
technical
interested.
things. We only correct for
Mm-hmm,
the existence of the heteroscedasticity, but we're interested in science
White estimates are good technique
and
for getting.
not only white, but also cluster robust errors.
It doesn't matter, but efficiency of this method is less than GLS. So maybe it's for future, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe not.
But in our case, our main variables are highly significant at 1% level.
Mhm.
That's why I think
And
that even if our standard errors are big, we receive also significant results.
And what about R squared in this table?
In this table, one moment.
We have lost it.
No, in my printed version, we have table first.
There
Around
was
0.7.
6, 9, no.
6, 9, I forget about
6, 9.
6, 9.
No, it's
As in
Yes,
table
yes,
1.
yes. And
Mhm.
third one will
in table one
We have the
a bit
highest
less.
actually
and third.
in this one with
Yes.
0.7.
Mm-hmm.
So
And R squared
this is
is
also interesting because we have
Remind what does it mean,
negative
the
effect of
third
only
column?
Third column means
This-
that this is with fixed set of products as a measure
Uh-huh,
for price index.
And for
And
price index.
Yes, difference is in price indexes and between first and second
This
total population.
Yes, we have here included total population, but we
As additional control variable for size of the economy.
no difference, no big difference in the most important variables. Yes.
Firstly, a technical question. How did you measure market potential? Just weighted GDP?
It is
No.
uh,
Has explained.
Q
More
J
interesting.
strich divided by
Some
sum of Q J
Okay,
strich.
what is Q?
That
GDP.
is total GDP.
Regional, not GDP.
GFP, regional.
GRP, yeah.
um,
Weighted, I mean.
divided by squared distance.
Yeah.
Yes, it means weighted GDP.
Not GDP, share of GDP.
Share.
It was
Share.
important
So-
in our case. It was very important because in this case we exclude overall trend of all GDP.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because we are
Yeah,
interested
and,
also in world market
The
commodities.
continuation. Why do you interpret this share
Mhm.
as a market potential?
Well, because this is the story of market potential.
Market potential. So, okay.
It's a, well,
Also shift better, yeah?
But you remember, market potential means that your customers are close. And if production equals income, then this means that the closer high levels of Q are, the higher is your market potential, like here. In this case, the big economies are close, distance is smaller, and in this case, they are far away. So,
I understand you, but generally the share of GRP depends on sizes of regions,
yeah, exactly. But,
their, I don't know, structure of production, because GRP, for example, in east regions, in some regional centers, the share of financial service is extremely high. So, okay, I understand, but maybe
This just means that the source of income
maybe
is different.
to use another name for this variable. Okay, maybe not.
Yes, I have another question. Could you return to the results
Okay.
of estimation?
In a second,
Yeah.
we use this market potential only to test our own interpretation, because in the model we have price level,
Mhm.
and we are also arguing, I didn't mention it before, but we are also arguing the market potential may not be that important in Russia for manufactured goods, because Russia is importing so many consumption goods. The import share, the share of imported consumption goods, of consumed consumption goods, is almost 50% in Russia. So the question is, how important is market potential in Russia if you are importing so much? Yes?
And the second question, if I'm not mistaken, the estimates of coefficients of unemployment rate and employment rate both are negative. It puzzled me a bit. How to explain it?
Employment rate is not a robust result. We have in the gravity interpretation, we have a positive impact, and there are different forces which may work at employment rate. One may be that high employment rate means that most people who are able and willing to work are already working, and if labor demand increases, then you have to attract migrants.
Yeah.
But it can also mean that you have a good structure, good labor market structure, and
Maybe
the
this is
economy is
simply
able to organize it by itself.
Endogenous variable.
All of them with lag.
Huh?
This time lag.
Yes.
Time. Okay. maybe you're right. Maybe
Maybe result
Because-
of multicollinearity will include many factors in your models.
That's why we try to check our results, robustness check, with
Mhm.
different combination of factors, include total population together with labor in the sector, labor employed, and also with employment rate and result.
But these intriguing results.
It's not
are
intriguing. We
robust.
have explanation for this coefficient, and Sasha produced this.
Yes, but we should also add employment rate is a control variable. Maybe we should.
But increase in unemployment means decrease in employment.
No,
for my
it's not.
This is
No.
not.
No. Because
different shares.
unemployment rate
Mhm.
is people who are employed plus people who are, is
And non-active.
unemployment rate is of course the number of people unemployed divided by people employed plus unemployed. But employment rate is L divided by population, and if for some reason, for instance, female
But,
labor participation plays a big role here. In some
Understand.
regions, there may be the case that all women are working, and in other regions not. We have, for instance, in the European Union, large differences between Southern Europe and Catholic countries like Italy. Many women do not
But it's
work.
Russia. It's not Italy.
We have checked also female participation rate. We have differences in female participation rate across Russia.
We check. We also estimate results separately for all employment rate and only for female participation employment rate. And we receive that there is a significant difference between
Significant
overall,
difference.
Yes, between
But
regions
this
and
is-
employment. But we decide
variables.
that this is not the question in this paper. We have explanation for negative signs, and we
For
decide
positive.
in
Negative
this
unemployment. I see.
classification negative. That's why we decide don't include these additional ones.
Yeah,
And
and
available
Mhm.
to do.
what is also important here, of course, the employment rate, because it is defined as total labor divided by population, is of course interacting with labor, which we have here, which is a part of L, and the population, which we also include here. This explains why the employment rate changes, because it is related also to other variables. This is my explanation why it has here a negative sign.
Okay, the explanation for estimates in the previous models.
Yeah, because we used in the previous model other explanatory variables.
With another size.
We use total labor in this case, which means
And
that then the
positive
employment
sign
rate
of
is
employment.
actually
And there is no price index here in this specification.
But opposite result of unemployment rate.
Employment rate.
I think it is because we have here all sectors included. So we have here, by including all labor in all sectors, the complete of L, whereas with this specification we've only directly measured B and D, so the sizes of C and D are
Which is
captured by
negative in previous.
total population and
Mhm.
employment rate, now part of these cities.
And also labor in A and labor in C have negative sign in previous specification. But
Yes.
here we don't include it. That's why the employment rate can also change this sign.
Okay.
Thank you.
And,
Anybody has?
and what about crisis? Maybe it's
Crisis?
the idea to
What is that?
Commodities price.
maybe some damage for crisis.
No, not prices. Crisis.
Crisis.
I see. I know. And listen, we have world market commodities price, which is exactly the same as the crisis, because
No, why? Why?
Yes.
not a
Why?
time effect. This is commodity prices. It's decreased sharply in 2008.
But it's
And then
some
becomes
another
low
fact.
and
Dummy
low.
variables is not sort of variables.
Hmm?
Dummy variables is another sort of variables.
This is CPI or consumer price indices?
No,
Нет,
World
that's
market.
commodity price это нефть.
It's an
Нет,
index
это
of
только
world.
Это нефть.
А.
Так нефть называют.
Мы же
Говорит,
знаем.
нет, это не вы, это в смысле на Яху так называют нефть, не
Okay,
к вам.
okay,
Вот я же говорю, что
okay.
Я вспомнил уже.
Only oil.
Это же не меняется по
По
региону.
регионам нет, но
По регионам не меняется.
Просят сюда на переменную.
ну, просто,
Раз.
да. Она по сути как есть данные, но просто
So,
те же себе
просто-
кризис имеет,
ну,
потому
да.
что
Да,
цены
она
резко
вот-
изменились в 8-м, да.
Вот так и ведет себя, да.
Okay.
to answer your question, how we include such exogenous events in this expression when labor demand is a function of the world market price, and if the world market price decreases, as it is happening now, then labor demand will also decrease. And if the model works, then this means that labor demand decreases now, and the results hold. So if you check it in 10 years again,
Да.
it should be the
Сейчас
same.
Okay, thank you.
This
прекратится
means that
миграция,
less migrants,
уменьшится
commodity-rich
Кстати, мы
sectors.
Саша цену обсуждала, но у нас же не absolute minus, а доли. Мы только измеряем направление.
А это понятно.
То есть мы видим, вот один человек будет мигрировать.
Окей. Один?
Может быть, я тебе вам просто рассказываю, что направления могут измениться или не измениться, а мы не знаем ничего про абсолют.
Anybody has any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Both. Both.
Окей.
Go on.
Which is your recommendation for policy?
Policy.
We today
Oh, no.
discussed for
Today.
hours.
But this is not a policy paper. We just conclude that our aim is to explain migration in Russia. This is how it was. Policy implications. Well, here are the results.
The
This is
explanatory
important for this
variables
paper.
are not control variables. You know, how you can change market potential, for example.
Only
Or other,
labor
yes.
in sectors.
Yeah, you can, for instance,
Labor.
increase.
How?
Well, what we see is that if the
How?
population
Some,
decreases,
investment
To install new plant?
no,
Yes. Yes.
commodity sector, yes, to install
Time
new
necessary is necessary.
oil construction.
You can add new regions to rise your.
To divide,
Yes.
to separate. For example, right. What about the Crimea?
2010. This is the
А
last.
вы посмотрите, какие у них политкорректные карты. То он туда не попал, там непонятно.
Правильно.
2010.
В диапазоне их времени.
Yes. All is correct.
to answer your
Policy.
question, it is, of course, policy implication is also a question of what your policy targets are. Do you have the objective to increase population in the eastern regions or not? We are not saying anything about this because
Yeah.
the model works without such assumptions. It just shows how migration works. And you have to make a decision if you want to accept
Перемены, которые мне
population decrease, you say it's okay or not.
And maybe to add extra explanatory variable, the foreigners, migrators, because the number of
Competition.
Middle Asia, right, for places, for jobs.
This is a good idea, but we have the problem with data because data for external migrants
Only
is very low. So it's around, for example, if we compare net migration and external migration, it's
yeah, but
maybe
generally
less
it's
than
not
10%
migration.
of
Maybe this is
that's why we can't
seasonal